Madam Deputy Administrator Carranza, for coming today, and thanks for coming into the district on July 1st with the Commerce Secretary Gutierrez. We really did get around Cedar Rapids, I think, quite a bit that day, and even went out to Palo, if I recall correctly, and saw the damage out there at that point. A lot of it was still very new, and there was a lot of debris, you recall, around. A lot of it's been cleaned up. The people of Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, all of Iowa that's been affected have been doing a pretty tremendous job, I think, in cleaning things up. I think one of the big fears, though, is that we're doing such a good job that we're going to be forgotten by the federal government. Congressman Braley and I and the whole delegation are going to make sure that doesn't happen. And I hear that all the time from folks in Iowa, that, we've got a great spirit and a can-do spirit and all the rest, but we still need help. That's the important thing to keep in mind throughout. But thank you for coming in when you did and paying so much attention to Iowa and to the Cedar Rapids area in particular. I just have, I guess, a number of questions still, because I guess I'm just a little bit confused about what some of the terms mean. Obviously, processing, SBA has been doing a great job, it sounds like, certainly compared to what happened during Katrina. But then the issues of closing and disbursement. I think I understand what closing is. I'm still not clear about disbursement and exactly who has the onus there. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I think Congressman Braley was trying to get at that, sort of, where the responsibility lay in terms of disbursement.
The mapping of the application, because I've visited the Dallas-Fort Worth Processing Center and personally saw 45,000 applications ready to go out to the post office. Some of them came in electronically. The document goes out to the applicant. The applicant then completes the document and then submits it for consideration. If it's approved, then we assign a case manager to the applicant, which is part of our reform agenda, which is customer-centric, become much more customer-centric, very timely turnaround. So if you submit your application on Monday, within a week's time, we would be able to not only follow up with a phone call on your application, but also assign a case management to that borrower if they require assistance. They then work through the process of that application being approved. Once it's approved, the money is held until the applicant is ready to access the funds. And so, based on the applicant's rebuild schedule, capacity to withdraw the monies, we're there. In other words, within 48 hours, those funds can be dispersed to the applicant. So it has nothing to do with the fact that there's a delayed reaction on our part.
Right. Well, when you mentioned allocating prematurely, what does that mean exactly? Allocating these funds prematurely, these loans?
If we have, for instance, if you applied and you were approved for $100,000 and I sent you $100,000, you would immediately start paying back that loan and would accrue interest. Yet you don't have your permits, you don't have the contractors, and so we don't want to over-leverage an individual if it's not necessary. So we hold on to the funds until they're ready to
And you have particular criteria that you use to determine whether they're ready or not?
Yes, they would have to present a schedule of work and contractor so that there's some validation for the need of funds.
Is it fair to say that might be part of why a relatively small percentage of all SBA loans that have been approved have been dispersed in Iowa? Was that part of the explanation?
Congressman, I wouldn't take that position because we do have representatives that could help them in the process if they're experiencing any delays. We've put in some expedited processing for permits, and Herb can help me out with the one processing that used to be very problematic for us, title search. And so we've tried to anticipate the type of delays that these borrowers would experience and try to remedy the situation for them.
Right, okay. And also, Congressman Braley mentioned what I guess we thought was an arbitrary decision made by OMB and perhaps SBA to increase the number of high-interest disaster loans to 30%. Did I hear you correctly? Is that something that's in the statute? Is that correct?
Could you repeat that question again? I'm sorry.
And I may have incorrect numbers, but there appears to have been an arbitrary decision made at some point by OMB and possibly SBA to increase the number of high-interest disaster loans to 30%, compared to the 2% of these loans that were approved during Hurricane Katrina. Did we have those numbers incorrect? Is that what you were saying earlier, or?
I'm not familiar with the numbers, Congressman Lopsek, and so I mentioned to Congressman Braley that I would get back to them on that. There is not a goal or a target that we hit. We look at a test, and there's a couple of variables that are considered when we go through that test. But our October 2007 criteria or test that just recently occurred was as a result of some compelling concerns that IG had, and so to be responsive to their particular concerns, we...
Yeah, would more high-interest loans likely be issued?
Excuse me?
Would more high-interest loans likely be issued then? Using those criteria?
Well, we look at, again, we revisit the tests. It's a process that has been ongoing, and it's reviewed the interest rates are reviewed on a quarterly basis to make sure that they are reasonable and are at the market or industry rate.
I want to go to the low-interest loans, and this will be my final question. What criteria are used for applicants to qualify for the lower interest loans?
Their inability to access funds from commercial or other means. We have probably the best loan terms because we definitely have longer loan terms. In other words, they have up to 30 years to pay a loan, and also the need for collateral isn't as aggressive as some commercial loans. So I believe that we take a lot of the factors into consideration when we establish a when we establish what we consider a statutory level of credit.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one more question. I'm sorry to follow up on that. I did a week's worth of flood assistance meetings in early August when we went back for the district work period. I had a number of folks who have small businesses, beauty salon, hair cutting, a number of things. A number of these businesses, business owners were operating out of their homes, that sort of thing. I mean, they're small business people.
Yes.
And they could not qualify because of credit or whatever the reason may be. They couldn't get an SBA loan. And what do I tell someone who can't get a loan and, they've been doing fine, but for whatever reason, they can't get a loan, and they can't get a loan necessarily at the bank either? What do I tell them when they come to me and they want assistance?
Congressman Lopsek, when we defer some of the applicants, we defer them for a FEMA grant. So between SBA and FEMA, there is financial assistance. So I would be pleased to consider those particular cases that you have, look into them, and perhaps there's something that we need to further look into and assist them.
Because there are a lot of people falling between the cracks, and that's what I think we hear a lot, in our jobs with these folks. But thank you for your service. Thanks for all you're doing. I really appreciate that, and I'll yield the balance of my time.